So this is a video that I never imagined in my life I would ever have to make. And if you are here from my Instagram, you have already known what I have been going through, as well as my boyfriend Colin, who unfortunately ended his life by suicide this past July. It's been around 5 months ever since then, and it just doesn't get fucking easier. And it is something that I know for sure I can't move on or move forward with my life acting like this shit never happened. So first off, just some notes. This is gonna be a super raw, unfiltered video. Second, yes, I will be talking about suicide and mental health, and if that's a trigger for you, maybe watch this some other time or just don't watch it at all. 3, I am turning off the comments in this video just because I feel like, I don't feel like I need to read more comments. I feel like I have a lot to sift through already on Instagram and through my messages, and if you really do have something you want to say in response to this, feel free to message me on Instagram. But I just feel like, I've already been talking about this through my comics and art on Instagram, and there's just, honestly, it's just been an overwhelming experience with just too much shit to read. And at this point, it's like comments are just comments. So then fourth, on top of that, just forgive me if I use any dark humor on top of everything, because that's just how I've been coping with talking about this experience to other people. And the reason why I feel like I need to make a video is just because I just don't know if I'm ever gonna come back here on YouTube on this channel. Like, things are changing, and I just think moving forward with my life and my art and everything, it's just like there is no going back to how things were. There is no 10 art tips for artists doing whatever. So first off, I feel like me even just saying I lost my boyfriend to suicide is an understatement to who Colin was in my life. He was my partner for the past 8 years, and a lot of you who have been on my art career retreats, around almost 70 of you probably met him at this point, which I am glad. I am really grateful that he got that opportunity to meet a lot of the people that my art has left an impact on. And he's someone that came into my life when I first moved to California and I wanted to break into animation. And he is the person that ultimately really brought me out of my shell and, motivated me to start taking my goals and my art seriously. I used to not be like this. Like, my YouTube channel kind of even existed because of him. Like, my Instagram, everything that I did to really take my art, storytelling, and moving everything about my life to the next level started because he was a part of it. Like, you'll see everything I started posting was around 2017, 2018, that time period, and it's really thanks to him that, I've gotten this far. And, we traveled a lot together, and he also was someone that just brought a lot of joy in my life when I used to be the moodier person, and I only wish that I could have done more for him because he was going through such a dark period in his life. And, we got this house together that we raised our 2 cats, Moon Pie and Bon Bon, together in. It's the closest to having a family I think I ever got to experience with him outside of my own family. And, moving from New York to California was just a big shift in my life, which, I originally thought I was fucking moving here to work in animation. I thought I was moving here to go to CalArts and, just be an animator. Little did I know that shit was probably just the bait to what actually this universe apparently had in store for me, which I still am not fully accepting. But, it's just kind of like, I am just fucking lost now and at a loss of words with what to say or do. But, I just never realized that he was going to play this huge of a role in my life, from life to now, even death. So, yeah, me and Colin have been together for around 8 years, and throughout the majority of our life, I remembered him just being the sunshine to my cloudy rain of mess. I don't know. I don't know how our roles switched, but it did. Throughout my life, I just remembered Colin being this positive ray of light, and I loved him for that, but I also was concerned about that to some degree, where I remembered asking him on some of our drives, like we would go on dates, and I would just be like, do you ever get angry or do you ever get anxious? Because I really don't understand how you are always so happy and just so chill with things in life. And I just remembered his answer to that was just like, I don't know. I just never feel anxious or sad. And I'm just kind of like, okay, but that obviously is not a good sign. So check in with your guys, or I don't know. I don't even want to say just guys, because I feel like everyone kind of deals with masking of emotions to some degree. But I do think men's mental health is a pretty big role in this as well. So I just always knew that, he had some level of masking of whatever negative emotions he had. But, I wasn't gonna force it out of him if he didn't want to at that time. So, regardless, we still had a relationship where he confided in me a lot about his emotions. And it got to the point where one day, this was in 2023, he ended up rage quitting a job that he felt like he was not being respected in. And he ended up joining the military out of nowhere. And this was out of left field. And at this time, I had no idea what was going on. But now I know that that was his first manic episode, because at that time, I didn't know that he had bipolar disorder. So this was a major point of contention in our relationship, because I was just kind of like, what the fuck? Like, what's happening? But I always had this gut feeling that there was something else happening. Like, I knew that even if he made this life-changing decision, there was so much more going beyond just that. And we actually went to therapy for that year. And, we got to a place where I was like, okay, like if this is the life decision that you feel like you need to make and you need to go join the Marines, like go for it. And he ended up going, only for during his time in boot camp, he ended up falling into his depressive episode and had his first suicide attempt. So obviously after that situation, he was discharged from the Marines. He was hospitalized and discharged. But I was angry because during the times that he was enlisted and joining the Marines, I just remembered going to the recruiting office multiple times. Like, I would show up with him and I would question the recruiter and ask, like, how do you know that this is coming from like a rational, like, rational mind? Like, I feel like there's something else, like, that Colin is making this decision from an unsound state of mind. And, I just remember the recruiter would just keep questioning me and asking me if I was like a mental health professional. Do I really know? And like, honestly, like, no, I don't. But I just know that my partner would not make this decision like that. It was just very out of left field. It was just this whole like life-changing decision that just was made over the course of like a night. I also just have to say that another thing they said to me when I was in their office was, oh, the Marines have this like top tier mental health screening system. If anything shows up in like Colin's like analysis, like, and if it shows up he has like some sort of mental illness,
Like, we know we would definitely not recruit him, but clearly they did not fucking catch on to the fact that he was depressed and dealing with bipolar.
But then this decision would kind of like last, and his behaviors surrounding that decision would last for like almost like half a year or a little bit less than half a year. And yeah, I had no idea that was his first manic episode. Then he had a crash into depression, leading to a suicide attempt at the Marines, which led to his discharge. And at that time, we just kind of thought, like, oh shit, like, whatever it is, we know it is mental health related and you should get the help that you need. But I just remembered that time period after he got out of the Marines. We were so focused on trying to get him under Medi-Cal because at this time he didn't have his job like anymore, so he had to go under Medi-Cal. And Medi-Cal, let me tell you, does not have the greatest resources, and also to be able to get onto their plan is not an easy process. Like, there were just so many options that you have to look into, and it's just not easy to just get onto a plan like easily. Like, it's something that I remembered we were on phone calls where people would treat this like they were trying to sell us their best offer when we don't really know what it is we're signing up for. There's just so much red tape involved with signing up for health insurance. And before we were able to even get him to his first therapy or psychiatry appointment, he had his second suicide attempt here at our home. And that led to his second hospitalization, which was a long-term psychiatric hold. And from that point onward, they diagnosed him with major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder, and he was on medication for both depression and bipolar. So throughout this time, Colin ultimately was just kind of like a whole different person. He was a version of him I've never seen before. He was mostly depressed, low energy, and just kind of like pretty flat is what how I would describe him. He stayed at his parents for some time, and then he did eventually move back and lived and then he did eventually move back here at home with me. And throughout the rest of last year, he just kind of has been going through what seemed like a mixed episode. So, for those of you who are not familiar with bipolar disorder, I've been reading a lot about it. I've been reading a lot about suicidal ideation, reading a lot about, how to love someone with bipolar or suicidal thoughts. But there usually are two major elements to bipolar, such as mania, which is you'll see your loved one with this like elevated mood. They might act erratic and agitated. It's not always just like sunshine and rainbows type of energy. A lot of it is also pretty dysphoric, and sometimes even psychosis is involved. And then with depression is, a lot more people are familiar with what that experience is like, but it's just no motivation to do anything, low energy, feeling hopeless and despair in life. And then there's also mixed episodes where you're kind of like in the state of both, where you're constantly just agitated. You have like energy for the agitation, but you don't have motivation or that will to truly live and, get your life to a stable place. So the majority of last year, I would say he was kind of in that state. And sadly, like, he would have multiple more attempts to not like actually end his life, but he was going to put a plan in place to end his life where, he would try to purchase multiple items, and me and his mom were the main ones trying to really stop him from being able to get a hold of those items. So throughout the course of last year, it was honestly a tug of war between trying to stop him from ending his life and him trying to end his life. And he was hospitalized again, like in late fall of last year, when he was going to try to purchase something to end his life once again. it's really hard to, navigate how to handle a loved one that at this level of severity of mental illness. And, I don't really feel like I have a success story to tell people like what to do. But one thing I do know that was really important, and as little as this action might have seemed, is to learn to just meet people with where they are at. Like, you can't force someone out of depression, you can't force someone out of anything. But the only thing you can really do with people like Colin, who was suffering, was to just sit with them in their darkness and be with them with where they are. And last year we did this challenge called 75 Hard. And for one of the exercises we would do is we would go outside every day at night and go on a walk for 45 minutes. And that was the time that I honestly would just want to hear everything that was on his mind. And I'll be so fucking real. Like, there were so many times I was just scared about the things that he was saying. He would express these super nihilistic philosophies on life and why he feels like he has the right to end his life and everything. And there's a part of me, one half of me is there to just like listen and just be like, I don't even want to say validating the darkness, but it's like in some ways you do have to validate at least the pain, the darkness, and try to tap into maybe a time in life that you felt like that. I try to tap into times in my life I felt like that and just let him know that he wasn't alone, and that, it's okay to share these thoughts and that I love him even when he had these thoughts. But then there's a part of me that's also just like, but how the fuck do you like validate someone who wants to end their life? And throughout last year, I've been like talking to 988 like maybe every other week. And I have to be so fucking real. Like, 988, I still think it's a resource that should exist. If you are dealing with suicidal thoughts, struggling mentally, emotionally, I would still reach out to 988 if I were you. I've even talked to 988 myself. But I really think it's important to realize that it is just kind of a band-aid solution to just de-escalate where you're at that moment, but it is not a long-term thing. Like, they can send you resources to where to get your mental health treatments or things like that, but it's just like, there is nothing that actually I feel will help someone turn that switch from being like, I want to end my life to I want to live. Like, it's not going to do that for you, but it is a way to de-escalate you being in like the super abyss level thoughts of your mind in that moment. So I just want to be real and just give my honest thoughts that, I still think 988 should exist, and that yes, reach out to it if you have struggles that you want to talk about, but at the same time, have your expectations about it managed, because it is not the end-all be-all solution. So I would just talk to 988 a lot, like, after these talks, and just not know what to do. I would try to look into their resources that they would send me, or like read books about bipolar disorder or suicidal ideation. I would join these like support groups about, how to love someone with bipolar disorder, or what is it like to be like a partner turned into a caregiver. And, I would try to learn everything that I could to know how to just be in this situation. Because honestly, like, knowledge, in my personal opinion, is power. And I really think that that is how I was able to stick through this for as long as I was able to, was just learning all that I could. Because the unknown, I think, honestly scared me more than anything. So yeah, I would go on all these long walks with him every night, just hear on, just everything. He would tell me about his childhood. He would tell me about his times in high school, the Marines, and his fallout with the company that he was working with, and just how he has been feeling regarding his relationships and everything. And, I knew to like take some things with a grain of salt, because I do believe what he says is coming from somewhere. But I also know that when you are in a manic or depressive or mixed state, it might be expressed in a way that sometimes is more abrasive than it actually is. So I try to, again, maintain the balance between, hearing what he has to say versus, trying to think about what is true and what should be handled or dealt with or addressed and whatnot. And I even try to look into things that, not everyone is perfect, and I'm sure that us being a couple, I've had times where maybe I gave Colin a hard time while maybe he was stressed and I couldn't even see what he was going through. So I've apologized for all those times where I felt like maybe I didn't really witness him in the ways that he needed to be witnessed while he was struggling, and maybe I'm lost in my own shit and maybe I take it out on him, or I put too much on him without realizing what he's going through. I tried to figure out what it could be that I don't know if I was even contributing to this, but all I did know was that by the end of every fucking walk we had last summer, we would always stand outside our house or home, and I would always give him a hug and I would just tell him, thank you for telling me everything that was on your mind. I just wanted to let you know that no matter what you shared with me, I will always love you. And, I'm just grateful for you being in my life. And, it was just always like such a mind fuck because I felt like I was living in a state of anticipatory grief where you have someone you love so much and they keep expressing this desire to die. And it's just like, it just felt like it was going to happen, and I had to prepare for that option in life just because I didn't know if there was anything I could do to really change his mind, and I had to still approach a lot of my conversations with him from a standpoint of like, I'm not here to change your mind, but I am here to just listen to what you have to say, even though deep down inside I don't want you to do what you are saying you want to do with your life. So yeah, anyway, leading up to the fall of last year, he did eventually have another attempt to buy something to try to end his life, and that led to me having to call the mobile health crisis unit, which if you're not aware of what that is, and I don't know if it's just in Los Angeles or in our world, but sometimes like you just don't know if calling the hospital is the right decision to make. And the reason why is because, like, again, as advanced as our world would like to think that we are in the world of mental health, I really don't think our world is where it really needs to be with that care, because I have heard about Colin's experience in like the psych wards, and there's a lot of people who share their experiences at the psych wards. And while it is a place to, again, it can help de-escalate the situation, I really don't feel like it's where it needs to be to really truly care for their patients from like a compassionate level. Because from what I've heard from Colin's experience, like you don't really get like a therapist to really like deeply get in touch with what you are going through or talking to you. They kind of just provide you like the medications and give you like group therapy sessions and just take care of like food and whatever for that time to just kind of keep you in a safe place for that temporary time until they can transition you to whatever next step you need for your care. But that is the place where I always feel like there's a gap. Like, it's like, all right, he was held there for the 5150, the psychiatric hold, but the moment that you're discharged, it's like, you'll get recommendations for places to go, you'll get suggestions, you'll get some guidance, but you never really actually get that full-on support for your loved one to really get access to the level of care they need. And sometimes that might be an inpatient or outpatient program, which is, a more intensive type of treatment and program for someone going through a severe mental health crisis. And unfortunately, I just feel like that bridge was never truly crossed for Colin, even though it's like we would try to get him to get to that state of where we would try to get him to that level of care, but it was just always us having to do it, and like the mental health professionals don't really help you bridge that gap, honestly. That's just our experience. So I've always been on the fence about calling the hospital on him because, one, I don't want to traumatize him again or put him in a position where he would have to be hospitalized and have more trauma on top of the pre-existing trauma. But second, it just gets to a point where I'm just a fucking 29-year-old girl. Like, I mean, I wasn't even 29, I was 28 at this time. What the fuck do I know about anything? Like, I don't know what I'm fucking doing. So I don't know everything. So it just got to a point where I was like, I think I just need to call the mobile health crisis unit, who basically sends like a team of social workers to your house, and then they assess the situation and decide if they should go to the hospital. So they make the decision for you, so that it's not me that makes the decision, because I didn't want Colin to associate me with being the one to like want to send him to the hospital. Like, trust me, like, I don't want this for you. But also, if that's what's needed for you, then it's like, I guess that's just what has to happen. So they ultimately did agree that he needed to be hospitalized. And after this hospitalization, he was prescribed Abilify, and he was on this like one single pill. And I actually do feel like, again, from my experience, I don't like follow any, this is not medical advice. When he was discharged from the hospital this time, I actually felt like things were actually starting to get a little bit better when he was on medication. After this experience, believe it or not, like literally 1 week later, I went on our career journey trip in Japan, which he was able to join me in on. And during that time, he would just work on his personal goals and life while I would just be hosting these trips. And it's just like, a part of me just still is processing the fact that I felt like I was living two completely separate lives. Like, most of you saw me on these trips as, you know, this like ambitious woman pursuing her art career and sharing her advice with everyone. But, you know, by the end of the day, I'm just a fucking girl going back to her fucking hotel room, reminding her partner to take his medication and making sure that he was like okay. And, you know, it was actually strange because I feel like in that time period in life, after his third hospitalization, I actually felt like things might be okay. Like, he was starting to show some signs of stabilization. He wanted to get his life together. He was starting to socialize with his friends again and displaying interests in things. And this was like kind of what I have been waiting for and wanting for him so bad since the beginning of this year. So, you know, time kind of goes on. I have another art retreat in South Korea that he also joins in on. And when we come back from South Korea, you know, I think that things seem to actually be improving. Like, when we came back, he really wanted to do a lot of things for us and like get the house together, and he wanted to make plans with friends and see people. And he has been like showcasing more of this desire to connect with other people that I did not see, you know, in the beginning of the year when he had his first two hospitalizations. And like, I just literally thought like, oh my God, things are getting better. He seems like he's finding more peace with his life and is accepting of where he's at and is doing what he needs to do to get his life in the place that he feels like it needs to be at and whatnot. And, you know, I remember this time period, he was starting to apply to jobs, and I would also try to help him. Like, I'm not even in tech, by the way, but like, I would try my best to just like edit his resumes, or like, I don't know, like write cover letters. But like, I wasn't doing everything for him. I was trying to still allow him to have some agency in that world. But I just wanted to let him know that, like, I'm just fucking here for you, man. Like, I don't think that we as humans were meant to go through life alone. And I feel like after the things that he went through, I just feel like he went through something so unfair that I just fucking wanted him to have his win for once, you know? So things in this time period felt like they were getting better. But little did I know that I forgot. I mean, I didn't forget, but I always knew. And I think I was in denial and didn't want it to be true. But while things seemed like they were getting better, it was actually the signs of him entering a hypomanic state, and then it would lead to mania. So a lot of people think in bipolar, like mania is like, oh my gosh, this person is so euphoric and happy and friendly and have so many creative ideas that they keep bouncing around. And, you know, people seem to love that type of character. And, you know, I do love Colin throughout just being bipolar, depressed, just him being himself. Like, I fucking loved all of it. And the thing that scared me the most about this manic episode is that it mostly consisted of like dysphoric mania, which for any of you who have a loved one that dealt with bipolar 1 specifically, it is like not like the happy creative mania. Like, sure, there was some of that in him still, but a lot of it was also like agitation, irritability, anger. He would have these like erratic rants that would last until like 4 a.m, and I would stay up with him. I would even draw some of his darkest thoughts for him. But like our sleep was hitting the negatives. Like, I got a Fitbit for the first time in my fucking life. And the Fitbit was telling me, like, Michelle, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm just kind of like, I don't know, man. I really don't know what the fuck is happening. So Colin was entering another manic episode, and I just did not know what to do with that. And what happened was he ended up taking off on a road trip across the country out of nowhere. And, you know, this situation just escalated to this next level. And I remember, like, I was in contact with a bunch of friends and family, and like the NAMI hotline, or like, you know, a lot of these mental health like groups to talk about what the fuck to do. I don't know what to do. I've been like talking to, you know, therapists and people who have dealt with bipolar. I tried to talk to like anyone to get as much knowledge as I could about what the hell was happening, because he broke out in a pretty bad manic episode. I found him like in the shower, and he started expressing a lot of delusions that weren't really making sense. But what did make sense is I remembered he had these same delusions from the first manic episode he had from when he joined the Marines. Like, it was almost like the same script was being expressed again. And I was just like, I know this is a manic episode and I don't know what to do. So it just kind of seemed like no one honestly really knew what to do. But what did end up happening was, after he took off on this like manic road trip across the country, was he ended up in a hospital in Kansas. And in that hospital in Kansas, they ended up putting him on an involuntary hold there. And at this period in time, Colin was like in this like frantic position of being super paranoid. He was experiencing a lot of paranoia and honestly what seemed like signs of psychosis. He was cutting off like a lot of friendships and pushing away loved ones, and he even ended up breaking up with me, which, to be honest, I like didn't even know if that breakup was like legitimate or not. And a part of me had to kind of just hold my ground and just be like breathing through it and being like, I really don't think that this is like real, but at the same time, I still have to consider the possibility of like, if he really feels like he needs to be separated from me to improve his mental health, like, I am kind of willing to sacrifice myself. But the only way that I can really know that that was what was on his mind is because I read a lot of his journal entries and whatnot in the past, of him just expressing how much of a burden that he felt like he had on my life, and he couldn't stand or deal with seeing me constantly take care of him, and he felt really guilty and bad. He felt like a charity case, in his own words. And I really think he wanted to try to prove that he could do this on his own, when to me, I'm like, no, man, you can't do this on your own. Like, when you're in a crisis like this, you can't you need a village. Like, you can't just cut off people. So even though it's like he wanted to separate himself from everyone and pushed himself away from everyone, at the same time, I kind of knew, like, I don't really feel like that's the right thing to do. But, you know, he was in Kansas under a psychiatric hold, and I disagreed with a lot of the ways that his hospitalization in Kansas was handled. I don't feel like, you know, the hospitals are really that, like, informed or educated on his level of mental health crisis. I don't know, but basically what had happened was they ended up putting him in prison for a few days because during his court hearing, which is what happens when you're about to get discharged from a hospital, is they kind of have to decide whether or not if you should be transferred to a longer term stay at a hospital or if you're just kind of free to go, because after you're put on a psychiatric hold, they just want to make sure you're not going to be a danger to yourself or others. But, you know, they decided that he should stay at another hospital longer, which I do agree with. But I guess he was not accepting of that decision and had like interference with like law enforcement where he was probably trying to like resist going. So from that, they ended up putting him in jail for like a few days when they knew that this man was not mentally well and going through psychosis and experiencing psychotic symptoms, which they literally stated on the hospital note or whatever. And they still put him in prison, which I feel like added more trauma and more damage to the situation than needed to be. Like, why didn't you just fucking send him to the next hospital? So then he went to the next hospital, and again, like, he was there for a while, and in the court hearing for his discharge for that hospital, which his parents and I were a part of, they ultimately said that they're frustrated because he just hasn't been talking, and they don't know what to do with him, so they're just gonna discharge him. And they said that he's choosing to be selectively mute, and they kind of like framed his behavior in a way like as if he's just fucking doing this to be like an asshole, just because he wants to. Like, he wants to do this for fun. Like, and I couldn't fucking believe what the fuck I was hearing on this court hearing. It was just, I was trying to express, like, you know, last year he was having all of these like suicide attempts. He was hospitalized multiple times. I don't think it's a good idea for him to be discharged, or if he is discharged, I think it would be a good idea for someone to be there to like pick him up and take him to like the next place safely or something like that. But they were just like, no, we have to make room for like the next patient, and you have to ask yourself, like, how much longer are you gonna let him like drag you guys around like this? And I feel like the wording of that just really upset me because they were treating him like as if he was doing this like out of his own agency. And, you know, I think when you're mentally ill and dealing with a crisis at this level, I do believe people still have some level of agency to their illness. Like, you know, there's a part of us that is still there, but I don't think that agency looks like a solid, firm grasp and be like, yeah, I can control my life now out of the blue. I don't know if any of you have played Stardew Valley. That has been my coping game this whole time, but like when you go fishing, like, you know how there's like a bar that just bounces and you have to align the fish icon to the bar? I feel like that's, but like imagine it at like the difficult level when like the bar is like jumping around and you're just trying to align the fucking fish to the bar. I feel like that to me is what symbolically looked like where Colin's level of agency was at with this mental illness, because I have seen him in person. I have seen all the nuances of how he was acting, talking, behaving, making decisions, and, you know, like, just none of it was coming from a sound, stable state of mind. And it was just upsetting me how these people at this fucking hospital were just like, he's just a fucking annoying teenage boy. You just gotta like, just stop like being involved with his situation and stop letting him drag you around like this. Which was fucking crazy because they ended up discharging him with no concrete steps to the next plan. Like, I do think that they maybe suggested this halfway house situation for him, but it's not like anyone would be there to facilitate bringing him there. And of course, he ended up not going there. And it was just so ironic because I remembered it was like blizzarding this day in Kansas, and they're like, yep, there's gonna be a blizzard coming, so you better you know, stay careful out there on the road when you're going through a psychotic manic episode and we expect you to drive in a fucking blizzard. So what ended up happening was he would bring himself to like these homeless shelters. He would be in and out of these hotels and whatever, and I would just still stay in contact with him, even though technically at this point he has chosen to separate from me and whatnot. And I try to respect the space, but I would still try to keep my tabs on him via like friends and family and whatnot. But, you know, at the end of the day, I just still felt like what really needed to happen was that, my honest opinion is, I think that he needed to be hospitalized and be given medication to de-escalate his mania, because his manic episodes, from my experience, lasted like almost like 6 months long, or like multiple months long. And what happens when you're manic is you constantly make these risky, life-changing decisions that by the time you crash into depression, you end up regretting like everything you did. And that adds to the shame, that then adds to the fuel of you wanting to end your life by the time you hit the crash and depression. So I've been advocating, so like, you know, I'm his partner, I'm his girlfriend, you know, I can go out there and like help him, but it's just gotten to a point where I feel like I've been doing everything on my own, and I feel like he kind of resented me taking care of him so much, and he didn't want to be in a position where I was constantly taking care of him, and then that would make him feel like a burden. Like, that dynamic was just no longer working. So I would try to respect the distance and just try to assess the situation from back here in California. And it actually did get to a point where miraculously, he actually did come back to California for like a brief amount of time. And he ended up staying here, where, you know, I tried to persuade or get him to seek the professional care that he needed. But I just don't think that his episode was over, and he was still insistent. Like, the moment he got back, his paranoia started striking in, and then he believed that he needed to go back to Kansas immediately because his car was left there, and apparently he picked up this like part-time job and whatnot. So it was a whole ordeal when he was back. Personally, I did not want him to go back to Kansas, but he did end up going back to Kansas. And I remembered, I just kept telling him, like, I love you so much. I just want you to get the care that you need. I feel like you deserve a life where you deserve to live a life without regrets and pursue your biggest dreams without feeling any remorse about any of them. I just want that for you, like, so fucking bad. And I'm just like fucking crying to him in my fucking dining room and whatnot. And he kept expressing to me that he understands, but he needs to go back to Kansas to like do this and whatnot. And it got to a point where I just had to learn to channel my inner Buddha. Like, I don't know how I fucking did this, but it got to a point where I was just like, I know I cannot control what he does, but I just needed to stay as neutral of a position as I could as his partner, because like, if I tried to control anything any further, like, I really do think our relationship would have become unsalvageable after that. Like, if I tried to become his mother or become a parent, like, there's no way our relationship could recover from that. And I just kind of like, you know, while I did not want him to go back to Kansas, I remembered I just told him on our last night together, I was just like, I just want to let you know I love you so fucking much. Like, thank you for everything that you've done for me. You left an impact on my life, and I just want to let you know that I will never forget the things that you have done to make me a better person. I just hope that you forgive yourself and that you let yourself cry and feel all the vulnerable feelings you need to feel and whatnot. But I did also let him know that this situation has gotten to a point where I need to start taking care of myself. I need to start, like, you know, I need to start looking out for my own emotional safety, because this situation has gotten to a point where it was no longer safe for me emotionally to be around. And it's not even like his fault. I don't even blame him. I'm not even angry at him. I just feel like this situation became emotionally unsafe for me for a multitude of factors that extend beyond just him. It is like the mental health system, our community, the way our world approaches mental health, men's mental health. There's just like so many elements that if no one was willing to literally like team up with me, because at this point, quite frankly, it was just me and his mom who were really doing a lot of the heavy lifting of the situation. There's no way that we could get out of this. And if he was so confident that going back to Kansas is his way of like being able to help himself, I just didn't know how I could say no to that. And I've been working with a therapist who also lost his partner to suicide, and a way that he put it was, his partner also left on this whole manic spree, or like this manic runaway. And in that moment, I have to remember that it wasn't about leaving me. It was about him going out there to find any last ounce of hope he could to have his reason to live. And I only wish that he had more support in not just enabling going back to Kansas, but just being like, like, it's okay to need help. It's okay to like cry. It's okay to have a support system and not do this alone. Like, I don't know, like it's okay to go to therapy. It's so like, I don't know, like it's okay to be taken care of. It's okay, like, I don't know, like it couldn't just be me delivering that message to him. And I think he needed to hear that from a lot more people who played crucial roles in his life. But I really do feel like a lot of that responsibility did fall on my shoulders, and I knew that it just could not be me moving forward. So I remember that last night, honestly, like, I did treat that goodbye, like the last time I would ever see him. And then the next day, I remembered, like, I woke up early because I knew he was going to catch his flight to Kansas, and I really didn't fucking want him to go. But I remembered I just stood by my door and I just like hugged him for like one last time. And then he walked down the hallway out of our house. And that was going to be the last time I would ever see him again. So after he left, I knew I had to like start distancing myself from the situation. But I still had friends who were keeping in touch with him and talking to him that I would hear from, so that I could kind of assess like the situation. And I mean, I'm not even going to dig too much into this, but there were moments that the situation escalated even further, and he flew all the way to Ukraine to join the Foreign Legion there. And that was a whole episode that I just don't think can even fit into here. But I was trying to keep tabs on him in any way that I could without like truly like emotionally involving myself in a way that I knew I would get hurt. Like, thankfully, I was still logged into his LinkedIn on my computer, and I was like, okay, I could see if he's like talking to anyone or has any like chance of like coming back to the US and like seeking stability here and whatnot. So this was like between March and June of this year, is like he would continue making a lot of decisions that I just did not fully agree with. But I also just didn't agree with the fact that he was not getting the care that he needed and whatnot. But at this point, it's just like, I feel like I've said all I needed to say to everyone. Like, I've made all my calls and cries for help, and me doing it further without any reciprocation from those parties was only hurting me more. So I was just at a loss of what to do. So all I knew was that, okay, I have friends calling him. I'm so grateful for those friends that did decide to keep in touch with him during those times. And then during the last month, he actually started reaching out to me again. But at that point, I have been told by so many people that I needed to start looking into like buying him out of the house or something like that. Maybe I should give him the money from our house so that he can like start his life. But then I kind of was resistant to doing that because I just know that when you're manic, you have like this like erratic money spending behavior, and it would just all be blown onto like what, like nothing. So I kind of was like left in a state of paralysis about those decisions. And he had all these hospital bills that came in the mail, and he also got this like restraining order from like his company, and it was just like there was just so much shit that I just did not know like how the fuck I would deliver that information to him if I were to be able to talk to him again. But in the last month, he started messaging me, and he started like expressing his apologies to me, and he was sorry for like putting me through all this. And he let me know, like, you know, it was not your fault. I just want to let you know that I understand why you had to do what you need to do, but I just want to let you know that I just love you so much, and I am sorry for everything, and I'm trying to do what I need to do to make things right. And for me, I'm just like, the only things that I could really be able to tell him in those moments was like, you really need to seek professional long-term help, and it can't be coming from me to make you do that, you know? And it's just something that I was just left in conflict of, because I didn't know how to respond to him for like around a month or so. But I did like make sure he saw the messages. And I remembered I was on my New York art career retreat. I was on the first day of my New York art retreat, and I got one of my friends who was able to get on a call with him was able to like record the call and like send it to me, and I was like listening to it on my way home. And from what it sounded like, it got to a point where it sounded like he was actually going to come back to California to seek like long-term care. And I was actually like kind of excited and looking forward to that. So by the time that, you know, a few weeks go by and I come back from my New York art retreat, I get the phone call that Colin ended up taking his life in Kansas. And obviously after that, like, my life absolutely took a switch, and I've never felt anger, sadness, hopelessness, despair, betrayed. Like, I just feel so misdirected by life. And like, you know, you go through life being told to trust certain people, trying to believe what people want to tell you to make the right life choices. I don't fucking know, but I just can't help but fucking look back at all of those times and just be fucking pissed off, quite honestly. Like, I'm fucking, like, just appalled. Like, I just feel like the world let him down, let me down, let us down. And I know a lot of people say, like, yeah, you should learn to forgive, and maybe I will one day in the future, but bitch, not right now. Like, I just. Something has been fucking lit up in me since July 22nd, 2025. And I just cannot let him or his story just go down the drain just like this, you know? Like, I feel like I have so much to say about our mental health system and our society that claims to be so mental health proficient, but honestly, I think our society is so mental health illiterate And, we all think that, oh, we are so aware about mental health and mental illness. But once, those symptoms start to become inconvenient, people start to fucking like back out and whatnot. And it's just like, I know I also kind of had to distance myself towards the end. But like, why did it have to get to that point that I had to distance myself? Is because it was just me. Like, I had like no village. I can't confidently say I had a village. I lived every fucking day in this house, on this couch, in this fucking building with these two cats. I remember what the fuck we have been through, and I don't think we had what we needed to be able to survive this. And it's just like, I totally understand that not many people have the tools to deal with the situation, and many people just don't want to escalate the situation further and, want to add to the suicidal tendencies. But at the same time, it's just like, there's so much wrong with our fucking world and society and our systems that I just think that it's so much easier to just be like, oh, we couldn't have done anything. Suicide is not preventable. Let's move on with life. Like, I think that approach is great for people that are prioritizing like their own inner peace and they just don't want to deal with this situation anymore, which, okay, to each their own. Like, yeah, I know, like, this was my person. Like, I just cannot let this shit just go like that. Like, this shit costed me his life, my life, and our life. And all I know is that I just cannot let this shit go just like that. Like, again, I'm very angry. And I'm trying to channel that anger in ways that won't be detrimental to me. And I know that step one of that is to just talk about it. I've been to like multiple suicide survivor loss groups at this point. I've been seeing a therapist who has done work in suicide prevention and has also lost his partner to suicide. So a lot of my guidance and knowledge and information is coming from these standpoints. And, I've also come from a world where I was taught that anger and negative emotions are not welcomed, but it is because we are in a world that does not allow ventilation or expression of those emotions, because we only want to live in this safe, curated, happy, positive world. And I really think that creating this expectation for people to be like that, this fake, happy contentment, it represses the reality of what everyone is really going through, which is not just happiness. Like, we're all going through a mixture of fucked up shit that has to go somewhere. And we're not really taught to channel those emotions. And I feel really sad because I don't think Colin really had the ability to do that either. I really do think a lot of his emotions and negativity was repressed, and being a man in this society, there's so much expectations to just not be that and to man up and to just be independent, when I think a lot more men need to support each other and themselves and teach each other that it's okay to go through these difficult emotions. Like, I'm just so fucking angry. And I know after I like film this video, I'll just let myself cry it all out, but it's just, yeah, that's just where I'm at. And that's why, going back to this channel, I can't fucking go back to making like fucking 10R tips. Like, fuck that shit. Sorry, I'm getting like unhinged. But, I had plans to like make a new YouTube channel talking about like my personal life stories, Muse stories. But I don't know, maybe that might have to go into like a lot of what I'm talking about right now. Is just, all I'm saying is I don't fucking know where the fuck my life is going to take me from this point onward. But all I know is that I cannot go back to that people pleaser version of me that was just like so willing to just be like, okay, like, you don't want to help. all right, like, and just not standing up for what I needed or what Colin needed, like, enough. And I know, like, people will tell me, you are enough, don't be so hard on yourself. And I won't be hard on myself, but I do know that a part of not letting Colin's story die and go to waste is me allowing myself to be okay with my anger and sadness and channeling it in the places that they need to go in. And what I do know in this lifetime is that all I am left with after I have fucking lost everything is art. And I guess that's where it's gonna go. A lot of people are gonna tell me that things are gonna be better, things will be okay, you will heal from this. But, you know, after learning a lot more about grief and my grieving process, there is no healing, there is no moving on from this. The only thing there is learning to carry the grief a little better. It's like maybe in 5 months from now, instead of like crawling on the ground with this, I'll maybe just be like taking baby steps with this. But it's always gonna be there. And like, even when I made my first call to join this suicide survivor loss group, the facilitator, who also went through his own loss, was just like, yeah, there is no healing from this. We just have to integrate it in our lives and adapt with it, because there is just that acknowledgement that I think is needed with a tragedy like this, is that it's not fucking okay that this shit happens. And I don't even know what the future is gonna hold for me. I could be saying all this shit and then just die like next year, and all of this could have just been said for nothing. I don't know. But all I do know is that I just have to take shit one day at a time, one step at a time, navigating the world in the ways that I need to be. And right now I need to be like this, and I need to surround myself with people that let me know that it is okay to not be okay, as cringy as that sounds. And I don't really know what else to do with that energy of not being okay other than sharing it through my art, which is one of the tools I guess I have been blessed with in this lifetime. Once you go through a life-shattering event just like this, it's like there is no going back to that life. Like, trust me, I fucking wish, and I would love to go back to a world of just having Colin and just being able to work on like stupid fucking cute comics and just making another video about like 5 ways to make money as an artist and like call it a day and live this like super low-key life and whatnot. Like, I want that life so bad. I just want to live my like fucking like Etsy store. What was I doing before this version of me life? But now I have to live a version of my life where I literally feel like I have to fucking yell, you know, like, I don't know. Anyway, this is not going to be the end of you hearing from me. I just probably am going to be more on Instagram, sharing my thoughts about this situation until I figure out what the fuck is next. And I feel like, you know, in the spirit of Colin, that's kind of always been him, is like, he's not that type of person to let that kind of mindset scare him. He's always been that type of person to be like, okay, well, like, what's next? Yeah, anyway, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for supporting me on this channel for the past many years. Literally, this was one of the ways I was able to support us throughout all of the hardships. But now that that part of my life is over, I feel pretty comfortable with parting ways with this channel for now. But it's not in a way that is like, oh my god, like, screw you guys, like, I love you guys, thank you for your support. But I'm just kind of at a point where I have to do what I feel like is right for my life moving forward for now. And maybe I'll come back, but there's also no promises. So I will see you guys elsewhere.